First contact with human engineering. High Inspector Zarleth of the Galactic Safety Council floated serenely through the pristine corridors of her research vessel, her bioluminescent tendrils pulsing with anticipation. After 3 cycles of studying primitive species, she had finally received clearance to inspect humanity's first deep space maintenance facility. The humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, yet they had already established a reputation for solving complex engineering problems in ways that defied conventional wisdom. "Inspector," her assistant Velinor chirped, multiple eye stalks swiveling in agitation. "Preliminary scans of the human facility show concerning energy signatures. They appear to be containing several microfusion reactions without proper containment fields." Zarleth's outer membrane rippled in what her species considered a reassuring gesture. "Calm yourself, Velinor. Humans are classified as a non-aggressive species. I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation." The human facility, designated Deep Space Fix-It Shop No. 1, their naming conventions were charmingly simplistic, loomed before them. Unlike the elegant bioorganic architecture favored by most spacefaring races, the station was all hard angles and protruding metal structures, with numerous external repair bays jutting out like thorns on a crystalline vine. As their shuttle docked, they were greeted by Chief Engineer Sarah Chen, a small human female wearing what appeared to be armor covered in scorch marks and suspicious stains. "Welcome to the Fix-It Shop," she announced cheerfully, extending a hand in what their cultural briefing had explained was a traditional greeting gesture, not a prelude to combat. "Most honored Engineer Chen," Zarleth began formally, "we are here to certify your facility for galactic safety standards. We'll need to inspect your engineering equipment and—" A thunderous boom echoed through the station, causing Velinor to instantly shift into defensive coloration. Engineer Chen merely checked something on her wrist device and smiled. "Don't worry, that's just Marco in Bay 3. He's probably using the persuader on that stuck airlock mechanism." "The persuader?" Zarleth inquired, trying to maintain her diplomatic composure. "Yeah, you know, the big hammer. Sometimes you need to give things a good whack to get them working again. Want to see?" Before Zarleth could formulate a response, Chen was leading them toward the source of the disturbance. They entered a large bay where a human male was wielding what could only be described as a handheld siege weapon, repeatedly striking a panel with enough force to make the deck plates vibrate. "Marco," Chen called out, "we've got the galactic safety inspectors here. Show them how we handle stuck panels." Marco grinned, hefting his implement of destruction. "Watch this," he announced proudly, before bringing the hammer down with another resounding crash. The panel popped free, revealing a nest of cables beneath. Velinor's documentation tentacle was frantically recording everything. "Inspector," he whispered in their native language, "they're using kinetic impact weapons as standard maintenance tools." "Now for the tricky part," Marco announced, reaching for something he called a pry bar, which to the alien's horror appeared to be a modified shock lance. "Sometimes you gotta really convince these panels to cooperate." Zarleth watched in fascinated horror as the humans casually employed what her species would consider military-grade equipment to perform basic maintenance. Her horror only grew when Chen led them to what she cheerfully called the tool room. The chamber was an arsenal that would have given a war minister pause. Rows of serrated cutting implements lined the walls. Devices clearly designed for piercing, crushing, and destroying were arranged neatly on shelves. In one corner, something was actually shooting out plasma. "This is just the basic stuff," Chen explained, picking up what appeared to be a miniature particle accelerator. "Wait till you see our power tools." "Power tools." Velinor's voice had risen to a pitch usually reserved for imminent danger warnings. "Oh yeah. Here, let me show you the plasma cutter. It's great for precision work." The next hour was a blur of demonstrations that challenged everything Zarleth thought she knew about human civilization. They watched in stunned silence as Chen casually wielded temperatures hot enough to melt hull plating, operated rotating devices that could slice through structural supports in seconds, and handled compressed gas cylinders with enough potential energy to power a small city. And this, Chen said, holding up something particularly terrifying, is just a simple wrench. Every toolkit needs one. Zarleth's scientific curiosity finally overcame her diplomatic restraint. Engineer Chen, does it not concern you that your standard maintenance equipment could easily be repurposed as weapons? Chen looked genuinely puzzled. I mean, I guess anything could be a weapon if you tried hard enough. But these are just tools. They help us fix things, build things, make life better. The whole point is to create, not destroy. As if to punctuate her statement, another boom echoed through the station, followed by Marco's voice. Got it. Airlock's working perfectly now. Zarleth exchanged looks with Velener, whose documentation tentacle had nearly exhausted its storage capacity. They would need to completely revise the standard inspection protocols. Clearly, humanity's definition of basic maintenance equipment required its own classification category. Perhaps, Zarleth suggested carefully, we could start with something less intensive, something that doesn't involve plasma or impact forces. Sure, Chen agreed brightly. Let me show you our screwdriver collection. Though I should warn you, some of them are power-assisted. Velener's color shifted to the pale green of resigned despair. It was going to be a very long inspection. The emergency response. High Inspector Zarleth was in the middle of composing a carefully worded report about humanity's concerning maintenance methodologies when the station's alert system activated. Red lights began pulsing along the corridors, accompanied by a calm automated voice that somehow made everything more unsettling. Warning: debris impact detected in Sector 7. Hull breach imminent. All personnel prepare for emergency protocols. Chief Engineer Chen's demeanor transformed instantly from cheerful tour guide to commanding presence. Marco, get the emergency kit. Velener, Zarleth, you might want to see this. Consider it part of your inspection. Before the aliens could protest, they were hurrying through the corridors. Chen was already barking orders into her communicator. I need the heavy repair kit at Sector 7. 2 sets of cutting gear. And somebody wake up Rodriguez. Tell him to bring Big Bertha. Big Bertha. Velener's eye stalks quivered with concern. Our largest portable plasma torch, Chen explained, as if that was supposed to be reassuring. Sometimes you need the extra power. They arrived at Sector 7 to find a scene that made Velener's documentation tentacle curl up in horror. A piece of space debris had punched through the outer hull, creating a spider web of cracks in the reinforced metal. Emergency force fields were holding, but they were clearly struggling against the pressure differential. Marco arrived pushing what looked like a mobile weapons platform, but was apparently the emergency repair kit. He began unpacking devices that would have given a military contractor nightmares. Okay, people, standard breach protocol, Chen announced, pulling on what she called a basic protective suit, but looked more like battle armor. We've got 10 minutes before those force fields start to fail. Let's move. What followed was the most terrifying display of engineering Zarleth had ever witnessed. Humans in protective gear swarmed the damaged section, wielding their tools with casual expertise. The air filled with the screech of cutting torches, the thunder of impact drivers, and the hiss of welding equipment. Amazing, Velener whispered, his scientific curiosity temporarily overriding his fear. They're containing temperatures that could melt carbon steel using nothing but handheld equipment and those primitive protective suits. Chen was in the thick of it, directing operations while simultaneously operating something she called a reciprocating saw that made both aliens instinctively back away. Rodriguez, we need that support beam cut through. Marco, get the patch panel ready. Someone hand me the big wrench. The big wrench, Zarleth inquired, immediately regretting the question. Marco hefted what appeared to be a meter-long metal bar with adjustable jaws. Sometimes you need a little extra leverage, he explained cheerfully, before rushing it over to Chen. The damaged section of hull was cut away with terrifying efficiency, the humans working in perfect coordination despite the chaos. Rodriguez arrived with Big Bertha, which turned out to be even more frightening than Zarlev had imagined, a plasma torch the size of a small missile launcher. "Stand back," Rodriguez warned, firing up the torch. The temperature in the corridor rose noticeably as he began cutting through the damaged support beams. "This is gonna get hot." Vellner's color shifted rapidly between stress patterns. They're using weapons-grade plasma cutters, without proper containment fields, in an emergency situation. Technically, Chen called out while wrestling with something called a hydraulic jack. This model's actually rated for mining operations. The military version is much bigger. The aliens watched in stunned silence as the humans essentially performed surgery on their station, using tools that could have easily doubled as siege weapons. The coordination and skill were undeniable, even if their methods seemed suicidally reckless. "Patch panel ready," Marco announced, maneuvering a massive piece of hull plating into position. "Fire up the spot welders." More humans appeared, carrying what looked like miniature fusion torches. The air filled with actinic glare as they began securing the patch panel, their movements precise despite the apparently devastating power they were wielding. "Inspector," Chen called out, her voice muffled by her protective mask. "You might want to document this. It's a pretty standard emergency repair procedure." "Standard?" Zarlev managed to reply, watching as sparks cascaded across the corridor. "You consider this standard?" "Oh sure. This is basic stuff. You should see what we have to do when the primary reactor housing gets damaged. Now that requires some serious tools." The repair was completed in exactly 8 minutes and 47 seconds. The humans stepped back to admire their work, casually powering down equipment that could have leveled a small building. The patch job looked solid, if somewhat inelegant by Galactic Council standards. "All done," Chen announced, pulling off her protective mask. Her face was smudged with carbon residue, but she was grinning. "Want to see how we stress test it?" "No," both aliens shouted in unison. "Your loss," Rodriguez said, patting Big Bertha fondly. "Nothing like a good pressure test to make sure everything's sealed proper." Zarlev looked at the repair site, then at her notes, then at the humans casually stowing away their basic tools. She was going to need a much longer report, and possibly a drink. "Engineer Chen," she said carefully, "I believe we need to discuss your emergency response protocols in detail, particularly the part about deploying high-energy cutting tools without a proper containment chamber." "Oh, we have containment chambers," Chen replied brightly. "But they're really more for the delicate work. You know, when we need to get precise with the atomic welders." Vellner's documentation tentacle simply gave up and went limp. Some things were beyond even its capacity to classify. "Perhaps," Zarlev suggested, trying to maintain her diplomatic composure, "we should continue our inspection in a less eventful area." "Sure thing. The maintenance depot's pretty quiet right now. Well, except for the thermal lance testing. And maybe the hydraulic press demonstrations. Oh, and I think someone's calibrating the new power hammers." The aliens exchanged looks of resigned horror. It was becoming clear that humanity's definition of quiet was just as concerning as their definition of basic tools. The workshop tour. The maintenance depot of deep space. Fix-It Shop number 1 turned out to be exactly as alarming as High Inspector Zarlev had feared. The massive chamber hummed with energy signatures that would have triggered military alerts in any other context. Humans moved purposefully between workstations, each carrying what appeared to be enough destructive potential to concern a small planetary defense force. "This is where we do most of our fabrication work," Chen explained, leading them past a row of machines that were literally reshaping metal through brute force. "Pretty basic setup, really." "Basic?" Vellner's voice cracked as they passed something called a metal lathe that was carving spirals out of solid steel with casual ease. "You're manipulating molecular bonds with handheld devices." "Well, yeah. How else would we make replacement parts?" Chen picked up something from a nearby workbench. Here, check out our new precision tools. The device she held looked innocent enough. A slim metal cylinder with various attachments. Then she turned it on. A beam of concentrated energy capable of cutting through battle-grade armor plating emerged from its tip. "This is just a standard microplasma torch," Chen said proudly. "Great for detail work. Watch this." Before either alien could protest, she demonstrated by etching an intricate pattern into a piece of scrap metal. "See? Perfect for those tricky repair jobs in tight spaces." Engineer Chen. Zarleth began carefully, all 4 of her sensory clusters pulsing with stress. "Are you saying your maintenance workers routinely carry directed energy weapons as part of their standard equipment?" Chen looked genuinely puzzled. "Weapons? No. These are tools. Though I suppose anything could be a weapon if you tried hard enough. Here, let me show you something really cool." She led them to a sealed chamber that bore warning signs in multiple languages. Inside, through thick observation windows, they could see a human operator working with what appeared to be. "Is that antimatter?" Vellner's documentation tentacle went rigid with shock. "Just a tiny bit," Chen assured them. "It's for our new precision welding system. Sometimes you need that extra kick, you know." Extra kick. Zarleth felt her outer membrane beginning to lose cohesion from stress. "Yeah, regular fusion welding is fine for most jobs, but when you really need to join some exotic materials." Chen trailed off, distracted by a commotion across the depot. "Oh hey, looks like they're testing the new power hammers." The test turned out to be a human operator using what appeared to be a handheld seismic generator to reshape a piece of hull plating. Each impact made the floor vibrate, sending Vellner's eye stalks into spasmodic oscillation. "Don't worry about the noise," Chen shouted over the rhythmic booming. "The dampening field keeps it contained to this section. Though we did have that one incident last week." Incident? Both aliens asked simultaneously, dreading the answer. "Yeah, somebody forgot to calibrate the resonance harmonics. Shook up half the station. But don't worry, we fixed it with some duct tape and a few whacks from the persuader." Zarleth's diplomatic training battled briefly with her scientific curiosity. Curiosity 1. You repaired a dampening field with adhesive strips and kinetic impacts. "And some zip ties," Chen added helpfully. "Never underestimate a good zip tie. Here, let me show you our fastener collection." The fastener collection turned out to be an entire room dedicated to devices designed to permanently bind materials together through various concerning methods. Vellner's documentation tentacle worked overtime trying to classify things like self-tapping screws, autonomous drilling penetrators, and riveting guns, handheld ballistic impact weapons. "And this," Chen said, holding up something particularly nightmarish, "is just a basic pipe wrench. Every toolkit needs one." "Every toolkit needs a device capable of generating enough torque to twist metal?" Zarleth asked weakly. "Well, yeah. How else would you loosen stuck pipes? Though if this doesn't work, we can always break out the thermal shock treatment." Both aliens decided simultaneously that they didn't want to know what thermal shock treatment entailed. The tour continued through what Chen called specialized work areas. They watched humans casually manipulating magnetic fields strong enough to affect planetary cores, containing temperatures that could rival small stars, and generating pressures that would make deep-sea creatures uncomfortable. "And this is just our standard maintenance setup," Chen said proudly. "Wait till you see the heavy engineering section. There's more." Vellner's color had faded to a pale shade of terrified resignation. "Oh sure, that's where we keep the really interesting stuff, like the quantum phase adjusters and the probability manipulators, though those are really more for special occasions." Zarleth made a quick decision. "I believe we have seen enough of the main facility. Perhaps we could review your safety protocols. Surely you have extensive training requirements for handling such tools." "Of course." Chen brightened. "Every new hire goes through basic tool safety training. Takes about an hour." "An hour? Both aliens stared in disbelief. Yeah, you know, don't point the plasma cutter at your face. Always wear safety squints. That sort of thing. Though we do spend a little extra time on the antimatter welders. Those can be tricky. As if to punctuate her statement, a massive crash echoed from somewhere in the facility, followed by someone shouting, "It's okay." The backup containment field held. Veliner's documentation tentacle finally gave up and went into emergency shutdown mode. Some things were simply beyond its capacity to classify. Perhaps, Zarleth suggested with what remained of her diplomatic composure, we should conclude today's inspection. I believe we have. Quite a lot to process. Sure thing. Chen agreed cheerfully. Though you might want to stick around. We're about to test the new gravity manipulation wrenches. They're pretty neat. The aliens exchanged looks of mutual understanding. Their report to the Galactic Safety Council was going to need an entirely new classification system, possibly several. The joint operation. The station-wide alert came just as High Inspector Zarleth was attempting to explain to her superiors why humans needed a completely new safety classification system. The lighting shifted to an urgent purple, and Chief Engineer Chen's communicator erupted with multiple urgent messages at once. "We've got a situation," Chen announced, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by focused intensity. A cargo ship just had a catastrophic drive failure. They're drifting into the station's gravity well with failed stabilizers. Zarleth's sensory clusters detected the rising tension. Surely the Galactic Emergency Response Team will handle. "They're 6 hours out," Chen interrupted, already moving. "We've got maybe 30 minutes before that ship starts breaking up. We're the only ones close enough to help." But Veliner's eye stalks swiveled in distress. Human maintenance vehicles aren't rated for emergency space rescue. Chen's laugh had an edge to it. "Watch us. Inspector, we could use your help. Your species has better radiation tolerance than ours, and we'll need someone who can get close to their drive core." "You want us to assist?" Zarleth wasn't sure whether to be horrified or intrigued. "Unless you want to explain to the Council why we let a ship full of civilians break apart on your watch." Chen tossed them each what appeared to be modified environmental suits. "Don't worry, we'll walk you through the basic tool use." Before either alien could properly process what was happening, they found themselves in a maintenance shuttle racing toward the stricken vessel. Marco was piloting while Rodriguez prepared what he called a light rescue kit, but looked more like a mobile arsenal. "Okay, quick lesson," Chen said, holding up various implements of destruction. "This is a plasma cutter. Don't look directly at the beam. This is a gravitational anchor. Try not to reverse the polarity. And this," she hefted something particularly alarming, "is our new experimental tractor beam projector." "Experimental?" Velnor squeaked. "We only blow up every third test now," Rodriguez offered helpfully. "Much better than the old model." The cargo ship came into view, a Garnaxian vessel designed for aesthetic beauty rather than practical maintenance. Its drive section was already showing signs of structural failure, crystal metal alloys warping under the strain of uncontrolled energy emissions. "Right," Chen commanded. "Here's the plan. Marco and Rodriguez will secure the hull with gravity anchors. Inspector, you'll need to get close to the drive core and take readings while we set up the containment field. Velnor, you're with me. We're going to hotwire their auxiliary systems." "I don't know how to hotwire anything," Velnor protested. "Don't worry," Chen grinned, handing him something that hummed ominously. "Human tools are very intuitive. When in doubt, just give it a good whack with the persuader." The next 20 minutes were a blur of activity that challenged everything the aliens thought they knew about engineering, physics, and several fundamental constants of the universe. They watched in amazement as the humans improvised solutions that should have been impossible. "The power coupling won't align," Rodriguez called out, wrestling with a particularly stubborn piece of equipment. "Use the big wrench." Chen shouted back, "Inspector, how's that core reading?" Zarlev, surprised to find herself actually enjoying the challenge, checked her instruments. Energy patterns are chaotic, but holding. Though these containment readings can't be right. Don't worry about the readings, Chen advised, while doing something to the ship's systems that made Veliner's documentation tentacle twitch spasmodically. Human tools tend to confuse most standard sensors. Just trust your instincts. The situation reached its crisis point when the drive core began to pulse with dangerous resonance. Standard procedure would have been to retreat to a safe distance. The humans, naturally, had other ideas. Perfect, Chen exclaimed, to everyone's confusion. That resonance is exactly what we need. Rodriguez, fire up Big Bertha. Marco, get ready with the quantum stabilizers. Inspector Veliner, you might want to hold onto something. What followed was either a masterpiece of improvisational engineering or a violation of several laws of physics, possibly both. Using their basic tools, the humans somehow managed to channel the drive core's instability through their makeshift containment system, using the excess energy to power their experimental tractor beam. It's working. Rodriguez crowed as the cargo ship slowly stabilized. Though we might have accidentally invented a new type of propulsion system. Document it for later, Chen ordered. Right now, let's get this ship to safety before anything else explodes. Explodes? Veliner's color shifted to alarm purple. What might explode? With these jury-rigged systems, pretty much anything, Marco answered cheerfully. But don't worry, that's why we brought extra duct tape. To everyone's surprise, especially the aliens, the rescue was successful. The cargo ship was secured, its crew safe, and only 3 minor explosions had occurred, which Chen assured them was well within acceptable parameters for emergency operations. As they helped secure the final moorings, Zarlev found herself reevaluating everything she thought she knew about human engineering. Yes, their methods were terrifying. And yes, they seemed to have an alarming disregard for what other species considered possible, but there was no denying the results. You know, she said to Chen as they watched the rescue crews take over, I believe I owe you an apology. When I first saw your tools, I thought they were weapons in disguise. But now I understand. They're whatever you need them to be. Chen grinned, patting her trusty plasma cutter. Exactly. Though I have to admit, watching you handle the quantum flux spanner like a pro was pretty impressive. You might have a future in human-style engineering. Please don't encourage them, Velnor begged, his documentation tentacle still twitching from everything it had witnessed. The Council will never believe our report as it is. Oh, speaking of reports, Chen added brightly, want to see how we're going to fix that new damage to the cargo ship's hull. We just got this great new thermal lance. Both aliens quickly decided that some things were better left undocumented. The new protocol. The emergency session of the Galactic Safety Council was in an uproar. High Inspector Zarlev's report on human maintenance procedures had caused what humans would call a collective meltdown among the assembled representatives. They used directed plasma streams for routine repairs. The crystalline delegation chittered in alarm. Their basic toolkits contain enough potential energy to power a small moon, vibrated the energy beings. They let apprentices handle antimatter. This from the normally unflappable quantum collective. Zarlev floated patiently at the center of the chamber, her sensory clusters calm despite the chaos. Beside her, Chief Engineer Chen seemed to be trying very hard not to smile. Velner's documentation tentacle was still occasionally twitching from their experiences. If I may, Zarlev began, her voice cutting through the pandemonium. I would like to propose a new perspective on human engineering methodologies. The chamber quieted, though several species maintained their distress coloration. Yes, humans use what we would consider weapons-grade equipment for basic maintenance. Yes, their approach to safety protocols is unconventional. And yes, they seem to have an almost pathological need to solve problems by hitting things with increasingly larger wrenches. The bigger the problem, the bigger the wrench, Chen muttered proudly. However, Zarleth continued, I have witnessed these methods in action. During my inspection, I saw humans save lives using nothing but their basic tools and what they call creative thinking, a term that I now realize is either grossly inadequate or terrifyingly accurate. She gestured to a holographic display showing footage from the cargo ship rescue. Several council members recoiled as they watched humans casually wielding forces that their civilizations treated with religious reverence. The fact is, humans don't see these implements as weapons. To them, a plasma cutter is just that, a tool for cutting. A gravitational manipulator is for lifting heavy objects, not disrupting planetary orbits. They have taken the fundamental forces of the universe and turned them into hardware store items. Available in the plumbing section, Chen added helpfully, causing several energy beings to flicker in distress. I propose, Zarleth continued, that instead of trying to force human engineering to conform to our standards, we create a new classification, human-grade equipment. This would acknowledge their unique approach while establishing appropriate protocols for cross-species cooperation. The council chamber erupted in debate. The crystalline delegation vibrated at frequencies indicating deep concern. The energy beings pulsed with uncertainty. The quantum collective existed in a state of simultaneous agreement and disagreement. Perhaps, Chen suggested, a demonstration would help. Before anyone could object, she pulled out what looked like a simple metal tube. This is just a basic universal repair tool. Watch. The next 5 minutes caused several new entries in the council's database of things we didn't know were possible, as Chen casually demonstrated what she called percussive maintenance techniques on a malfunctioning council display system. See, she said proudly as the display sparkled with new life. Sometimes all you need is the right tool and a bit of know-how. And if that doesn't work, came Marco's voice from the back of the chamber, where he had somehow appeared with their emergency kit. We've got the big hammer. The council's security forces moved to confiscate the tools, only to freeze in confusion when Chen explained these were just the basic models. The heavy-duty equipment was back at the station. Working with humans, Zarleth explained to the stunned council, has taught me that perhaps our definition of safe and dangerous needs revision. Yes, their tools could theoretically be used as weapons, but so could anything in their view. The difference is in the intent. Exactly. Chen beamed. Like this antimatter containment unit. It's not for weapons, it's for making really precise welds, or this quantum phase inverter, great for fixing temporal misalignments in the break room coffee maker. The point, Zarleth hurried on, seeing several council members beginning to lose molecular cohesion from stress, is that humans have achieved something remarkable. They've taken the most destructive forces in the universe and turned them into creative tools. They don't build weapons disguised as tools. They build tools that just happen to be capable of extraordinary things. The council chamber fell into contemplative silence, broken only by the occasional hum of Chen's basic toolkit and the whimper of Eleanor's documentation tentacle trying to classify everything. Finally, the council reached a decision. Human engineering practices would be officially recognized, with appropriate warnings and protocols. All species working with humans would receive special training in what Chen called practical physics, and what everyone else called terrifying but effective. Just remember the basic rules. Chen told the council cheerfully. Always wear safety glasses, don't cross the streams, and if it doesn't work the first time, get a bigger hammer. As the session concluded, Zarleth noticed something odd about the council chamber's central pillar. Engineer Chen, did you actually repair our quantum crystalline display system with adhesive tape and impact recalibration? Duct tape and percussive maintenance, Chen corrected. Works every time. Though you might want to avoid using the southeast entrance for a while. Think I might have accidentally created a small temporal eddy. Nothing a good wrench won't fix. The council hastily approved all of Zarleth's recommendations, possibly motivated by the growing hum from Chen's toolkit and the appearance of Marco wheeling in something labeled Big Bertha's Big Sister. In the end, Humanity's approach to engineering was officially classified as unconventional but effective, with the subheading of handle with care, or better yet, let the humans handle it. And if the Galactic Safety Council now kept a supply of what humans called basic tools in their emergency kit, well, that was purely for research purposes. Though no one ever did explain what happened to the southeast entrance. Some say you can still hear phantom echoes of someone asking for a bigger wrench.